I hope my dishwasher isn't too loud because I feel like I need to record some more because I won't be able to Monday after school. I have a dentist appointment. So here we go. Share screen. We are on to chapter 23 of Sarah Bishop. Sorry. Yeah, 24, because we read 22 and 23 in the last setting. Hey, and we wrapped up or reviewed at the end of the last chapter. But let's just touch base again. She's doing great, it seems. She's preparing for winter. So she's gathering wood, catching fish. She killed a deer, didn't want to kill a bear. So anyway, she seems to be doing good. But when everything's going good, it kind of makes me think, what's going to happen that's bad? And we know that those guys are after her. We know that winter's coming. So that's where my prediction is, somewhere there, that somebody may come, or the winter, something's going to happen in winter. She may hurt herself. I don't know. So let's go. Chapter 24. The wind blew hard that night. It rattled the makeshift door and made strange noises high up in the ceiling. At dawn, it died away. Everything was so quiet that I decided that snow must be falling, because when it falls, everything all of a sudden is dampened. The sound is dampened. Then I heard sounds again, and I thought that it was an animal scratching around. But when I went outside, a man was standing not a dozen paces away. Oh, wow. What do you know? There was a low-growing bush between us, so I saw his face before I saw the rest of him. It was an Indian face, dark and long, with black eyes that caught the dawnlight. He peered at me in surprise, as if he had come unexpectedly upon an animal he had been stalking. The Indian, he was neither young nor old, moved from behind the bush. He held up his hands to show that he was not armed. In response to this friendly gesture, I leaned my musket against the wall. Only then did I see that he had a hunting knife tucked into the top of one of his buckskin leggings. He touched himself on the chest and spoke a long word that I took to be his name. It sounded like Wantiticut. Titicut? Wantiticut? He wore a greasy deerskin jacket hung with tiny pieces of copper. From it, he drew forth a sheet of paper, which he unfolded and thrust toward me. The paper was greasy from much handling, and most of the writing was blurred, but I made out the words White Plains and the name Yellow Monkey Tavern. The Indian held the paper in front of me for only a moment before I had a chance to read further. He thrust it back in his jacket. At the same time, he made a gesture that took in the ponds, the lake, the stream, the forest, all the country that lay around us. Mine, he said in a haughty voice, mine. The axe was propped against a tree that I had planned to cut down for a new door frame. The Indian strode over and lifted it to his shoulder. He glanced around, searching to see if I had anything else that suited his fancy. His eyes fastened on the white bat, which had returned from its nightly wanderings and was hanging above the door. No good, he said, and raised the axe to crush it. I stepped in front of him and put the bat inside the cave. Again, he shook the paper in my face and made a gesture that took in everything within his sight. Mine, he repeated. Wakabuck, mine. I was fairly sure that the paper had nothing to do with me. Most likely he had picked it up somewhere in his wanderings and was trying to pass it off as a deed of ownership. The Indian stared at me and waited. I wanted to tell him that I owned nothing, not the meadow, not the lake, not the trees, not the cave. We stared at each other in silence. His eyes were hard, like the glint of the knife tucked away in his legging. I wanted to tell him that though I laid no claim to what lay around us, I would not leave it. I had come here from a far distance, and I was not to be driven out by him nor by anyone. He looked from me to the musket. It was standing near at hand. I picked it up and pointed to the axe he held on his shoulder. He made no move to put it down, but grunted in an insolent way. He then glanced about, apparently for something else to take. I half cocked the trigger. It caused a small noise in the quiet morning. I pointed to the axe and said the word he had used and knew. Mine. He moved his feet at the click of the trigger. His eyes shifted in my direction, and in them was a hard light. I expected him to lunge forward at any moment and yet use the axe upon me. I cocked the trigger. It made a loud sound. I raised the musket and pointed at him again. I told him once more that the axe belonged to me. He hesitated with his mouth open. Then he said something in his own language, dropped the axe on the ground, and made his way down the slope along the stream to the edge of the pond. His canoe was pulled up on shore. He lifted it into the water and sped away, using his paddle on one side, then the other. I watched until he was out of sight. The rest of the day I looked for him, thinking that he might return. That night I lay awake, the musket at my side. Shoot, what do you predict? I'm thinking, man, what if that guy returns with a whole bunch of people? You know, from the history we know about Native Americans, they were supposedly, there were treaties, there were papers that they couldn't really understand, but they were given land, and white people were, so Europeans were supposed to stay off it. So if she's on his land, what he thinks is his, yikes, what's going to happen next? I didn't see that coming. I knew there would be some trouble, though. I could feel it. Chapter 25. Signs were everywhere of a long winter to come, the same deep ice and snow we'd had 2 years before at home. Tree squirrels gathered nuts at a frantic rate, scarcely pausing in their labors. The flying squirrels, which are usually nocturnal, meaning they sleep at night, were out at dusk gathering the last of the hickory nuts, blown down by the 2 days of wind. Their undersides were sparkling white and heavily furred, a certain sign, my father had said, of early snow. The wild geese began their journey south, even leaving the lake at night, until one cold morning it was deserted. I missed the cries and the shining wedges. After 3 wild misses and waste of powder and a ball, I shot another deer and smoked the meat. I dipped a dozen candles from the tallow and 2 dozen rushlights from rushes I gathered along the 2 ponds. Then I began on a door for the cave. The rushlights and candles were easy tasks, but I had made them at home many times before, but the door caused me trouble. First, the opening to the cave was jagged on both sides and at the top. With my axe, I cut out a frame to fit and then chinked the holes between the rock and the wood with mud mixed with straw. This was the easy part. The hard part came when I tried to make the door itself. I had no tools except the axe and the jackknife. The knife had belonged to my father, and I had it saved from the burning. Although I had never made anything out of wood before, if I'd had proper tools, I could have managed something. I cut out rough boards to sit the door frame, but without any auger, I had no way of boring holes for the cross pieces. Instead, I bound them together with leather thongs. Then I had to push the rough door into place. It still was not a door because it lacked hinges. Finally, I gave up and just leaned it against the opening. It covered half of it, that was all. I could squeeze inside, but so could the cold. Then 2 days after I set it up, a hard wind came and blew it down. Except for the door, I was fairly snug against the winter, even a deep winter, but I would have little to do after supper. I had neither flax nor wool nor the means to weave them. At the farm, I'd always stayed up working long after the men were in bed. I thought about making a journey into Ridgeford village to buy needle and thread and cloth for a dress. I had less than 10 shillings to my name, but possibly I could earn money at the inn. I thought about this for several days. The trees were bare as well as most of the bushes, which would make traveling easy, but I was afraid to go. Captain Cunningham's, Alexa, stop. Let's see. The trees were bare as well as most of the bushes, which would make traveling easier, but I was afraid to go. Captain Cunningham's men most likely would not be there looking, but they might be. The truth was, I didn't want to see anyone. I had been so busy gathering wood and fire or wood and food, I'd neglected the cave. It looked like a bear's nest. Things stuck here and there underfoot. I spent a day cleaning up. I made a broom out of marsh brushes and swept up the stone floor and covered it with tallow, which made it shine in the firelight. While I was sweeping, a strange thing happened. The broom had a long handle, and I was flailing away at the dirt when the white bat started to fly. Night was falling, the time it always went out on its night journeys. Suddenly, it began to swoop back and forth around me, darting in and out, squeaking as it went. I marveled that it didn't touch the swinging broom. Suddenly, the thought struck me that it was playing a game, seeing how close it could come without colliding. I swept faster. I swung out the broom around my head. The bat flew in and out. I swung faster and faster. The bat still whizzed in and out. I'm thinking maybe he's trying to get her attention because the native has come back. Let's see. Exhausted by the game, I finally let the little creature fly away. I had the feeling that if bats could laugh, this one was laughing now as it disappeared into the dusk. That night, I gave it a name. The creature was white, which made me think of angels. I thought of all the angels I could remember, the blessed angels, Raphael, Chamuel, I don't know that name, Michael, Uriel, Jophiel, Zadkiel, and Gabriel. Whoa, these are all names I don't know. I thought of the throne angels and the angel rulers of the 7 heavens and the angels of the 12 months of the year and the angels of the hours of the day and night, all I could think of. Remembering the creature's wide mouth and long pointed teeth, I thought of Isaiah 14 and Lucifer, the fallen angel. But at last I named it after the archangel Gabriel, Gabriel of Walkabout. Oh, I've already pulled it up. Here's the next one. Let's make it big. Oh, maybe that was the end. Let's make sure. Was that the end? 131? Yep. So she names the little bat. She names him Gabriel. I don't even know. Gabriel, Archangel Gabriel, Gabriel of Walkabout, because that's what the native had called the area that he waved to, saying mine was Walkabout. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing since I'm gonna only read 2 chapters. Okay, let's end this. Bye.